Hello, I'm Retro Jules, and welcome to World of Tanks, and welcome to Flame's Garage. Flame is my Polish friend who has very kindly lent me his Type 4 Tier 9 Japanese super heavy tank in his garage, and is going to show us what it looks like with its camouflage on. Flame is my designated driver for today, as we discuss and look at the weak spots on the Type 4. If you've come up against this tank, it really is quite a monster. Now, Flame's tank, you may notice, is slightly different to the normal Type 4. It's slightly lower at the back, and the reason being he's got it all stocked up with Zbrojka and pierogi and loads of crates of Bigos, and he's also got his G2G clans sitting in the back. The main one being Red Bulls, and Red Bulls sits in the back because he doesn't play tier 10 or tier 9, he likes tier 7, so Flame's got this tank pretty much stocked up. So, on a serious note, let's talk about the Type 4. It is an absolute monster. It's the second slowest tank in the game, and it's also got the second highest health pool of the tier 9 tanks. And I'm going to put two tanks up against this. I'm going to put up the tier 8 Panzer RU251, so a light tank going up against the super heavy, and I'm also going to put up the tier 9 French medium, the AMX 31er. I was also going to put up the only tier 9 heavy that I own, which was the French AMX 5120, but the penetration on that is exactly the same as the 31er, so there was absolutely no point in showing you that footage because the outcome was exactly the same. So let's have a look at the armour on this tank and just see where its strengths and weaknesses are. So here we are with the Type 4 in Armour Viewer, and in a nutshell the armour thicknesses are, on the hull, 250 at the front, 140 at the sides, and 150 at the rear. And the turret is 250mm on the front, 200 on the sides, and 200 on the rear. So even if you face this tank front on, you're going to have real problems. Even an E75, a Mouse, a Tier 10 Waffle Maker will not penetrate the dark red areas on this tank. Something like a Panzer absolutely will make mincemeat out of this tank. Unless you've got a penetration on your tank of probably 270mm upwards, then you're going to have to be really careful at where you aim your shots at this tank if you're facing it front on. And if you've got a Type 4 player who knows how to play this tank, then they are going to be facing you front on. Sides and rear, quite easy to penetrate, but something like a tier 7 Walker Bulldog is going to even struggle to penetrate the rear and the sides of this at 150mm, because the penetration on the Walker Bulldog is only 175mm. So if you face these, you might want to consider carrying a little bit of gold ammunition to make sure you get the penetration that you need. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. It is a tough tank to crack, but it does have weak spots, and if you know where they are, then you're not going to have too many problems when you face this tank. So if we start on the lower glacis, either side of the lower glacis you've got these sort of wheel arches which must cover the transmission or something. They are 10mm less than the actual lower plate. So whereas that lower plate is 250mm, these arches are 240mm, and if you aim into them from the side, then you do get penetration through there. However, if you do aim dead center of the lower glacis, then you are not going to get penetration. And just bear in mind that we are talking about tanks with sort of 260 penetration and below. Anything above, you're not going to have to be quite so picky. The upper glacis Isn't very thick, but it's very, very well angled. If you fire a shot there, it is going to bounce. However, if you are looking down at the tank, that would be quite a good place to hit the tank. Now the tracks are tough. It normally takes a shot or two to track this vehicle. So if you're in a light tank and you're picking your shots, just bear in mind that it might take a shot or two to actually stop this tank and take its tracks out. Now as we get up into the sort of middle section, these flat plates are an absolute no-no to aim for. The plate in the middle is again absolute no-no. That is actually angled as well, and bear in mind when we talk about this tank, we are talking about it face on. We're not talking about this tank being angled at all. So obviously these thicknesses would increase dramatically if the players play this tank at an angle. Now the shoulders, interesting enough, this is an interesting point about this tank. If you aim for the shoulders front on, they are weaker. The shoulders are only 200mm thick, but if you aim at the shoulders from the front, your shot will ricochet, it will bounce. However, if this tank is side scraping, when this tank is angled, those shoulders are then at 90 degrees to you. They're face on, and because they're only 200, you can get penetration into those shoulders. Coming back to that front plate, we said, you know, don't hit anything, but you can aim for the machine gunner's port and you can aim for the driver's view hatch. Front of the turret, no, don't bother. Sides of the turret, from the front, don't bother because it will ricochet with those angles, but you can get the turret from the sides. The sides are 200, so they are weaker. And the cupola is a funny one. The cupola is tough. If you come up against this tank from any angle, I would not bother aiming at the cupola. Your reticle does go red as you run the reticle across the viewports, and maybe if you could get a shot actually into the viewports, you may get penetration, but I just would not bother, and it didn't work for me. So that's this tank sort of roughly covered with the weak spots. So let's put the RU251 and the AMX31 up against it, and you can see how this plays out. And we're going to put these tanks up against this Type 4 front on, 100 meters distance, just so you can see from a relatively close distance how tough this tank can be. So this is my Tier 8 RU251 Speer Panzer, German light tank. This is the fastest tank in the game, and we're about to go up against the second slowest tank in the game. The slowest tank being the TOG 2. So the only thing you really need to know about this light tank is its penetration is 190mm, and as we know with the Type 4, most of the armour is 200 plus. So we're just going to get a distance of 100 meters, which is pretty close. So just bear in mind, if you're further away, then you really don't stand a chance against this. And we've just got this yellow reticle, and that's where our reticle goes red, just on the viewports, but I don't think you're ever going to get penetration there. So we're just going to circle around, get a bit closer, and we're going to shoot into sort of the side of the lower glaciers towards the tracks. We're getting a red reticle, but no penetration, and that's because I think we bounced off the one of those curvatures at the bottom. Another shot at the cupola, doesn't work, and it's really tempting because your reticle goes red, but you don't bother. The cupola does not work. So I was just trying to get into position here. I didn't choose a particularly good spot of the map for positioning myself against flames heavy. So one shot into the tracks, so we've damaged the tracks, but we haven't tracked the vehicle. and the second shot into the tracks. So we've already got the weakened tracks, the second shot does. So now we're going to try these shoulders. Now we've got 190mm of penetration. They're 200 thick. They are square onto us, but we don't get penetration there at all. And you will realise that if you're in a tier 8 light tank, you've just got to get behind this tank. It's the only chance you've got. And I was just going to start putting some shots into the rear, but decided here that actually let's try the sides first. So the sides of this tank are 140mm, so we shouldn't have any problems. And that shot goes straight in, a little bit higher. That shot goes in nicely too. Now the turret's a bit of a weird one. So we get penetration there. Bearing in mind that the sides and rear of the turret are 200 and our penetration is 190mm. So you can get penetration at the side of the turret, but it's not reliable. So I'm just putting a bit more distance between us to just see how the sides can be penetrated from a bit further.
Enemies looking right at us.
Because I was pretty close before, but we still get penetration in the side there. Just going to try the side of the turret. And now that a little bit further back, we're not getting that penetration. We're going to aim for the Japanese flag. No penetration there either. And all the sides here are 200 thick, but we get the ammo rack. So whether it's slightly weaker at the rear on the sides, I don't know. But it doesn't show that in the model. And I think if you're coming up against this tank on the move, I just wouldn't bother aiming at the sides of the turret. So we're now behind the tank, trying to drive off the map. So we're at 75 meters, we're quite close. Lower Glacius at the rear. Penetration, and we set him on fire. Excellent. A little bit higher. The rear of the turret. No penetration there. So even though we've got the orange reticle, we just do not get that penetration. Just going to try another cupola shot, you never know. And like I said, just don't bother. So another shot in the rear. And we get penetration, so it's on a smidge of health. And just imagine if we'd run out of ammunition. Can a tier 8 light tank ram a tier 9 heavy? No, we barely scratched it. And just to finish off the Type 4, there we go. So as you can see, if you're in a lower tier light tank, you've really just got to get behind the tank, otherwise you need to load up your gold ammunition to stand any chance. So I'm in my AMX 31er prototype, tier 9 French medium tank, and we're going up again against Flames Type 4 tier 9 super heavy Japanese tank. So the penetration on this tank is 260mm. We've got 70mm more penetration, and bearing in mind that the Type 4 armour is 250mm at its maximum thickness, we shouldn't have too many problems. And again, bear in mind that this tank isn't going to come at us angled, we're going to be taking it head on. And we're not going to shoot the rear or the sides of the tank, because we've already established with the Speer Panzer where you can and can't get penetration, and mostly of course you can, and with this tank we'll get penetration everywhere. So we're just having a sniff around and watching the reticle. We're going to go for a lower Glacius shot, and we get penetration straight in, and we'll try another shot on the lower Glacius, and we don't. so we don't know what the difference is between those two shots. And you're just going to shoot into the sides towards those curvatures and we get penetration. So if you sort of shoot into the angled sides of the lower plate, you can get penetration. So we're going for the middle plate, no problem. Just to the side of the cannon, side of the mantlet, these flat surfaces, no problem there either. Right, the shoulders, faced on, they're going to bounce. They're well angled, but of course if the tank is side scraping, they will be square onto you. Now here's a strange one, cupola. Orange reticle this time. Oh, there we go, red. And we actually get penetration into the cupola. And we'll try that again just to see if it was a fluke. And there we go. So if you've got that decent penetration, then the cupola is a target that you can go for. And the sides of the rear aren't going to be any problem from the AMX 31er at all. So there you have it. That's the Type 4 Japanese Super Heavy. And thank you very much to Flame for letting me destroy his tank a few times. And I hope that's really helped you to sort of see where the weak spots are on this tank. If you've got 260mm of penetration upwards, you're going to be okay. But if you come up against this in a tier 8 medium or a tier 8 light or a tier 7, then you are going to have problems and you really are going to have to aim for the weak spots. And like I said, even with an E75, a Mouse or a Waffle Maker, you're still going to have to pick where you shoot this tank if you face it head on. I've really enjoyed making this video. I hope it's been some use to you guys. Keep safe, keep tanking, and I'll see you soon.